syndrome, but sometimes people believe that they've been transformed into an inanimate object. For example, one woman says that she feels like she's a chest of drawers, which is a remarkable thought. But the common thread there is the loss of animacy, the reduction of the animate to the inanimate. And you raise a very interesting point about when this might have become apparent and whether it was apparent in the ancient world. I don't know of any accounts of it in the ancient world, though there are accounts of most of our broad syndromes, certainly of paranoia, probably delusional jealousy and so forth. But the particular thing of Cotard is interesting because it's named after not the first person to describe it, but the fourth person to describe it in the 19th century. But the first descriptions go back to the 18th century. And interestingly, the first descriptions of schizophrenia go back to the 18th century. And what can one say about the 18th century? It's the era in which the scientific revolution was taking off, the era of the Enlightenment, very important movement, but the tendency in both of these things is to think of life in a more mechanistic, more detached way than we normally would think about it. So you raise a point that I think is fascinating. What one can say is that this aspect of right hemisphere functioning, that it is the one that allows us to see things as animate, is seen across a range of conditions. So you can temporarily suppress either the right or the left temporal lobe. And with the right temporal lobe suppressed, people see animate objects, they see animate entities, living things, as inanimate objects. And with the left hemisphere suppressed, they see life in everything. They see that the sun is alive because it moves in the sky. They think a stone is alive because it's got atoms that are dancing in it. And they think that food is somehow, it has a sort of an animate relationship with the eater. So these things are intriguing, I agree. And we might come on to talking about appetite as well. Abnormalities of appetite tend to follow right hemisphere damage. It's true that anorexia nervosa is also largely related to right hemisphere deficits, although it's not, strictly speaking, a problem of appetite at all. But it is certainly a delusional syndrome which affects people's sense of themselves, of their body, and issues in a desire to reduce what one eats.
Yes, indeed.
In the case of Cotard's, though, I think, one of the things that bears out exactly what you say is the case of a man who believed that one of his relatives was in fact a machine and took a chainsaw to him to cut off his head and find the chips inside this machine, this robot. So it's a thing that we see in a number of right hemisphere deficit conditions, that people think of other people as well as themselves as zombies. They see them as purely mechanisms. A man described by R.D. Laing thought that his wife was some kind of a machine, because when he told her a joke, she would laugh, but she was just programmed to do this. So once you get thinking like this, of course, there's no way out of it, because everything can be interpreted as an aspect of a machine. But you're very right to draw parallels between the way we now think, increasingly are persuaded to think by popular science and by sometimes the contemporary philosophers, to think of ourselves as zombies or machines.
Yes, lumbering robots, famous phrase. Yes.